I'm here in Iceland playing my first international chess event in years. It's a strong open event with many grandmasters and international masters. In my first round, I played black against international master Dietmar Kolber from Germany. That being said, it was a really unique game because he fell asleep twice during it. So he started off with the English. I played e5, and this is what I had prepared for. But in this position, I was expecting either g3 or knight c3. And he instead played knight f3. I know for a lot of newer players, it doesn't make sense that such a small deviation would completely change my preparation, but it did. I had to choose here whether to go for the line I would play against g3 or the line that I would play against knight c3. So I chose the line I would play against knight c3, and I continued with knight c6. Here I was expecting him to play knight c3, and then I would play knight f6, he would push g6, and then I would get d5. This was my prep, and instead, he pushed d4. Already out of prep on move 3, and usually it's okay, but every now and then it's some opening that I haven't played very often, so I haven't really brushed up on my openings against the English, so I ended up burning so much time in the opening because I didn't know what plan to go for. I ended up taking knight takes, and here the computer likes just letting white recapture the knight by playing a move like knight f6. I guess I could have gone for this. I wasn't sure which pawn I would take back with because I'm not used to playing this kind of structure, and I thought since he's higher rated, I might as well go for a line with a lot of trades instead. So I gave him a check, he blocked with the bishop, I took queen takes, I took the knight, he took back, and here I decided to play queen f6, which I thought would be fine because he only has 2 minor pieces left, so I thought having my queen out early might end up having a nice kingside attack on him later on. But he just moved his queen back, and it was kind of awkward because the only square I had for my knight was knight to e7. The computer already starts liking white's position a little bit better here, but it was really hard for me to tell that this was going to be hard to play because I don't have any weaknesses. We've traded off 2 pieces, but then when I started to try to come up with a plan, it got a lot more complicated. He continued with knight c3, and I continued with knight to e7. I wasn't worried about him putting pressure on my pawn because I figured I could just move the queen over, no big deal. So I just continued castling, and here he pushed e4. At this point in the game, my opponent already has a pretty big center, and I'm struggling to come up with plans. How am I going to take my bishop out? If I push d6 right away, then I'm worried about the knight coming to d5, putting pressure on the c7 pawn, and here I actually can't even defend it, so I can't push there. What else can I do? I don't want to push the pawn to c6 because then my bishop is trapped behind white pawns. I cannot push d4, d5 because I lose a pawn, and I can push d6, but then it's going to be a weakness that's not defended by another pawn. So again, I started thinking a lot here because I just was not prepared with the opening, and the best that I could come up with, I'm pretty sure, was a6 to just try and get his knight to not attack my pawn. He continued normal development with bishop to e2, and here I had a lot of creative ideas like moving my queen to g6 to put pressure on these 2 pawns. But I figured white could potentially even sacrifice this pawn and just go for the castle, or just move the bishop over, and then I didn't really see what it could lead to. So I continued with my plan and decided to just push pawn to d6 to free up my bishop. So I pushed d6 to free up my bishop, and it was still very awkward because I am not going to be able to push the pawn to b5. I'm not going to be able to push my pawn to c6. I don't even know where my bishop wants to go yet. Here he castles. His position is so much easier to play. I stood up to go look behind him to see it from his point of view. I was like, yeah, he has all the space, and I don't know how I'm supposed to continue here. I was already struggling to find a plan, which is why I started making slightly awkward moves, like rook to d8 here. I was playing rook d8 because I wanted to come with my c6 plan, and I wanted to over-defend the pawn. What I was doing here was mixing ideas from my old openings that I used to play, like the King's Indian, where you sometimes have these structures and they suck there as well. into this game. So what did he play? He pushed his pawn, taking even more space. If anything, this should be a course for how to play this game as white. My opponent played with 90.2% accuracy, and I played with 84.4. Sad, but it's okay. We're learning. You know, I felt really bad during the game, but at least this is forcing me to learn opening preparation. So I did prep a lot against the English today, and I didn't know this line, but I am going to look at it and learn after this game. It's okay. And maybe I'll do my preparation better for tomorrow also. Okay, anyway, so he pushed his pawn in the center here, and you know, I wasn't afraid of him pushing one more time because then he'd have this hole on e5. I was a little bit afraid, I think, of e5 coming in the future because I can't take because my rook is pinned. So I had to do something about this, and the move I came up with was bishop to d7. This way, if he pushes, I could take the pawn. I'm at least developing, but again, I'm making slow improvements in my position, but I don't know what my plan should be in this position. I don't know what pawn breaks to go for. I'm basically just hedgehogging and trying to survive. Here, he moved his rook to c1. He's just putting his rook on where there might be potential action, and I decided to push c6. I wanted to control these two squares, hoping that I'd maybe be able to move my knight in the future and that it wouldn't be stuck defending the d5 square, because I was worried about him putting his knight in the center if I ever left. And I also thought with a move like c6, maybe I'll be able to sacrifice or go for some kind of b5 in the future, because that's all I could figure out with this pawn string. Here, he moved his rook from f to d1, putting pressure, and this is a position where I made a pretty big mistake, and I also ended up spending a lot of time. I had to figure out how to defend this pawn, but there weren't a lot of good solutions. If I moved my bishop, let's say, to e6, I'm pretty sure that this is instantly losing. And why did I think this is instantly losing? Oh yeah, because he pushes my bishop away, I can't go here because he takes, and if I go here, then I'm pretty sure that he could just push a pawn move like this, and my rook is pinned. I was also afraid of moving my bishop to e8. I thought that this variation, where white ends up taking two rooks for the queen, was just way better for white, because my bishop would be stuck. I couldn't see how I would get out of it. So even though this was the best computer move, I thought it looked really uncomfortable. Yeah, he would have a pawn weakness as well, but I figured that after he defends, he's pretty solid and my pieces are just tied down. So instead, I came up with a really defensive move of putting my knight back where it started. I didn't want to do this, I just couldn't find any other solution to defend this pawn. I felt like this position was just self-hatred, honestly. It was so tough to play. I was just crushed, cramped, and hoping that white would make some kind of mistake. Yeah, chess.com put a question mark on this. So here I at least had one hope of opening up the position with d5, but of course my opponent didn't let me do that, so he pushed here so that I could not push the pawn. Here I tried to be a little tricky. I also had no moves. I can't move my knight because I lose the pawn. My bishop also cannot move because then there's potential pawn pushes because I cannot take because my rook is pinned. So honestly, my position is just not giving me a lot of options here.
The guy is, yeah. Alexandra is not doing well.
So I moved my queen to e7, and you know, here I was just trying to put some pressure on the e4 pawn and think that maybe if I gave this pawn later and one of the defenders moved away, I could take it. He moved the bishop over here to just put an extra defender, and here I played bishop e6, looking towards this pawn and also blocking him from pushing and putting pressure on this pinned pawn because I get bishop to b3. But of course, he can just defend. Anything I try to do in this position, he just defends. I don't think this is the point in the game where he started falling asleep, but it happened at two times. I lost to an older man who was falling asleep twice in the game. And it hurt. No, it did. It really hurt. I'm still in pain right now. It's still fresh. But we're going to continue and we're going to learn. Ugh. So here I also had to defend against e5. So I decided to push c6. I also wanted to have a square to put my bishop back. My position was so cramped. I was just trying to do anything here. Here he pushed, which I thought was a bad move, but come to think of it, it ended up working out for him. I moved my bishop back, because again, don't have a lot of moves, and now he put his knight on the side. Here is where I'm pretty sure I made a blunder. I had just been sitting cramped for so long and felt like I needed to do something that I ended up pushing en passant, which wasn't a great move.
Did she really play b5? Did Alexandra forget how the pieces move?
That being said, this position was already so much worse. I had also considered making a move like queen to c7 so that I can actually prepare b5 properly, but then I was worried about e5, f takes. I can't take back because my rook is still pinned, and this position maybe would have been better than what I had seen, but I thought that there was a chance that I could get the pawn back and maybe trick him. It was a desperate approach in a position that was just very uncomfortable. So I pushed en passant. And yeah, what does the computer say about this? The computer says b5 is a mistake. Tell me something I don't know. So here I decided to just try and go into an endgame that was way worse, pawn down, and keep fighting, because that's what you have to do. And again, at this point he had fallen asleep twice, so I thought that there was a good chance that he'd fall asleep again. I'd make a move quietly, not wake him and flag him. However, that did not happen. Okay, so he played correctly here. He recaptured the pawn, and this is really problematic because now he has a passed pawn. I took his knight, he took back with the pawn, which made a lot of sense because otherwise I could have recaptured there. And here I played my bishop back to just start defending my pawn on f6, and here he surprised me. I thought that he could have just pushed the pawn right away, and as soon as this happens, I'm just completely lost because I'm defending against this passed pawn. But instead he moved his queen back. I was already under 10 minutes on the clock here. I had spent so much time in the opening. He had about an hour, but you know what? Never give up. So I played queen to b3, putting pressure on both of his pawns. I was just trying to create any kind of counterplay, as you should when you're down. So he pushed his pawn away, and here I played queen to a3, just trying to maybe somehow get in a check, or you know, the dream would be for me to push my pawn here. And even though I'm still worse, at least he wouldn't have a defended pass pawn. But of course, he did push his pawn to c5 as he should, and at least in the game it felt like I was getting slight chances for a comeback or a blunder because I was able to play rook to b5, putting pressure on both of the pawns here. So he defended with his queen because the pawn on c5 is more important than the pawn on the side. Again, this pawn is really critical because it's defending the passed pawn on d6. Here I think I got to 30 seconds on the clock. I didn't want to take with the queen because I was scared of rook here, which would then force off a queen trade, which I thought was losing. Again, even if the game was losing, I was still hopeful in my head, thinking about the comeback to the man who fell asleep. So I took with the rook. In case of rook to a1, I'd be able to capture a pawn, so at least I was trying not to trade off pieces. As always, if you're down material, you usually want to avoid trades. Here he pushed my queen away. I moved queen to a2. I just wanted to have the option of coming back. And here he played queen to e3. I was trying to make really quick moves and not lose to a blunder since I had under 2 minutes on the clock for the rest of the game. You get an extra 30 seconds per move, so that's why I didn't lose on time. And I wasn't too afraid of the queen coming to e7, but I figured better safe than sorry. So here, I'm pretty sure that I just put my queen back, and now he actually switched his focus, which is what you want to do towards the endgame. When you're already better, sometimes your opponent can defend one weakness, but they usually can't defend two. It's called the principle of two weaknesses. And here he already has a passed pawn. I have an isolated pawn on the c file and on the a file, and he started putting pressure on the pawn on a6 as well. I defended with my queen, and I was also trying to grab part of the open file here, but of course he just pushed me off right away. So I moved my queen back, just trying to defend, and here he put his rook in a way to attack my pawn on a6. Principle of two weaknesses. There's no way that I'm going to be able to defend both of them, even though, of course, I did try. Actually, I lied. I did not try. There was nothing I could do here anymore. I think I considered moving my rook here, but what was I afraid of if I moved my rook here? Oh, maybe I was afraid of the queen coming here or him doubling up. So I decided to just give up that pawn because it would be lost long term regardless, and try a move like rook to f7. Maybe I'd get some compensation with something like rook e8 and the rook coming to a2. I was hopeful. Here he doubled up his rooks, and I played rook to e8. Again, I was trying to get some kind of last minute tactic, but he found a very clever move here. He played rook to b8. And here I couldn't make a move like rook a2 putting pressure on the bishop because he would just take. If the bishop takes, then he would come in with the rook, and I cannot defend because he would give check to my king and my rook, and this position is a disaster. I couldn't make a move like rook a2, which was my only chance at a counterattack, because he could just take the rook, queen takes, bishop takes, and then check, wins a rook, GG, game over. So instead, I did the only move I could see. I had about 15 seconds at the clock. I was about to flag, and I wanted to at least make it to move 40, where you get another half an hour. So I sacked my rook. It was the only way to not lose instantly. That being said, it was still completely lost. If you're a beginner, you should actually try to figure out why this is lost, and it is a good endgame to practice. So here he just traded everything off. I took with the queen. I was low on time. I thought both would lose, but maybe it would have been better to try to keep the queens on the board. He took my rook, and I took back with the a pawn because I didn't want to give him two passed pawns. Again, not that it would have made a difference, but I was trying. He brought his rook out to e1, putting pressure on my bishop. I couldn't come to block the pawn because he would just kick me out. So instead, I moved my king over. If he would push here, he actually couldn't get his pawn right away because I would take the rook. That being said, it didn't matter because he just started bringing his king in, and I have no moves here. So then I pushed my bishop here just because lack of any moves. He attacked my bishop. I came on over with the hopes of if he came to attack my pawn, I would defend it, and if he pushed, I could bring in my king. But of course, he didn't fall for that. He just brought his king one more square over to defend the square, and I resigned. That was it. My first game is a loss. I think the takeaway here is that I ended up playing into opening that I was not familiar with, that my preparation didn't cover, and I burnt way too much time. So I'm going to try to figure out a way to avoid this in the future. I'm definitely going to look up this line so I know how to play it for next time, and hopefully the next games will be better. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to continue uploading the recaps. Please let me know your feedback in the comments so I could do better each day, and hopefully my chess will go that way also. Bye!